Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Everybody good? Good. Okay. My name is Sandy Watson, and I am the administrator here at the Interfaith Center. I welcome you to the Interfaith Center's summer program of dreams, peace, salam, and shalom to all. Today will be our last class of this session. The Interfaith Center's mission is to reduce the fear and prejudice among the world's religion. We aim to change the attitudes and behaviors of people by educating people around the world of different religions, promoting interfaith dialogue, and providing relationship building and opportunities. Again, we are thrilled to have Reverend Susan Sims Smith as our orienter and our facilitator. She has been a Jungian psychotherapist and spent 25 years in private practice. I am going to put in the chat her website, and that's where you will find a lot of dream resources, a book list, and 50 recorded lectures. All of these sessions are recorded that we are doing today. If you happen to miss a class and you want to go back and look at some of the classes, I will also put the YouTube URL in the chat. During the teaching time, please keep your mics to mute. We have an opportunity to speak. You will have an opportunity to speak, but we're having a question and answer session before the end, as we normally do, but also we will have a 30-minute one after that will not be recorded. Please raise your hand if you want to be called on for the Q&A, and we will select as many as possible. You might have some comments or burning questions that you just don't think can wait, and that's fine. But we do have a feature in Zoom where you can talk in the chat box, and we encourage you to do that. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over now to Reverend Susan Smith.
I'm so happy to be with you all. I've loved our time together. We've navigated a lot of heat in the outside world while looking for spirit to stir up a little heat in the inside world, because dreams will definitely do that. If you haven't been able to find your joy or your excitement or your passion or your sin, the dreams will just help you along. So the first thing that I want to say about dreams and life after death, and we know that none of the guidelines that I'm giving hold up all the time. So hold them gently as observation. Unconscious thing it wants to do, and including turning all these guidelines totally upside down. So with that said, I want to say something about dreams where somebody has died in the dream. So for the most part, if somebody that you love is getting ready to die, or you are getting ready to die, or somebody you don't like is getting ready to die, it is unusual. It's not impossible, but it is very unusual for that to show up as that person dying. That is not usually how it happens. So a dream of something dying in a dream most often is the transformation of a particular energetic field. For example, if I have been going around really angry and I didn't even know I was mad, and then I become aware that I'm really mad, and so I listen, what is the anger about? And I work with it, and I'm compassionate to myself, and I give myself more of what I need, and I set boundaries if I need to. And gradually that anger transforms, and maybe I have a flash of irritability and I really want to say something that I know I shouldn't say, and I say to myself, do not. I might have a dream that night that a gigantic wasp died in front of me. So a wasp can sting. It's easily aggravated. It's irritable. it's true that if you don't mess with it, it's probably not going to mess with you, although that also is not always true. So if something dies in a dream, you look for, did the energy that is symbolized by that animal or that tree or that house that fell down or that person, is that energy transforming inside me, one of my inner selves, or is it transforming out in my world? So another example might be, if there's an artist whose work I particularly love, like I love Kathy Holder's paintings. So if I have a dream that Kathy Holder is dying, for me, that she's an artist. So then I look to see, has something happened to my artistic side or my creative side? Has that energy been dying lately? So it might be an energy in you that you want to die, like your inner wasp that is overly irritable and easy to bite others. That might be a blessing for that to transform. And if it is transforming, it's really a blessing for you to know that it's transforming. If your inner artist is dying, you might decide that is not something that you want transformed. You want to actually give it more energy or change. If I dream of a really sexy movie star that's dying, then I need to ask, what is going on with my own sensual energy, my own Aphrodite? Is it dying away because have I been too busy to connect with that part of myself? So you look for what energy is carried by the person or thing that is dying in the dream. And is that energy that you want transformed, or energy that you don't want to have transformed and go away from you? So before we start in dreams more related to life after death, let me just be quiet and see if you have any comments or questions or thoughts about that part of the adventure. Can you think of an energy? You do not need to say this out loud. This is not show and tell. But can you think of an energy in you that you wish would die? Or better said, transform. Again, you don't need to say it out loud, but think of a subpersonality or a part or an attitude that you really wish would transform. So just keep that in your mind for a minute. And then think of an energy that might be waning and weakening that you really wish would be fertilized and would grow. So a lot of the everyday dreams are about the movement of energy within the psyche. So you look at the dream almost as a seascape of what was going on in the life of the dreamer the few days right before the dream. Now, that won't capture every dream, but that will capture maybe as many as 80 or 90% of the dreams are a photo of what is going on in your own soul right before the dream. And dying, when it shows up as a literal death, it's often transformation. So if you have thoughts or questions about that a little later, we'll have plenty of time. We can hear them. So now let's talk about dreams and life after death. And as we get into this, there probably will be some more categories that I haven't named. But here's how I think about dreams and life after death. Dreams that people have before they die. So we're going to look at some of those. What do dreams look like that the person might have before they die? What might dreams look like that their friends or family or loved ones might have before they die? And what might it look like for dreams that people have after a loved one has died? And if we have time, I'll say a little bit about dreams where it appears that the loved one is showing up in the dream, actually saying something, communicating something. So because this is mystery and richer than any of us can understand, the other life after death, I mean, it's much richer than we can understand. Me trying to put it in categories is just me trying to cover some of the waterfront, but we know it's much bigger than any of that. And that's part of the joy of all this. So I want to tell you a dream that I had maybe 35 years ago. So I was a Christian and had read the Bible and had been to church, and I knew that everybody believed in life after death. But I actually believed in my dreams because I saw them always telling me the truth and helping me. So I had a dream that is what converted me to totally believing that there's life after death. Now, that's kind of a backwards way into it, but that's exactly what happened. So if you had asked me 35 or 40 years ago, do you believe in life after death? I would have said yes, but it was just an idea floating up in my head. It was not in my body. I couldn't have sold you a bill of goods about it. I couldn't have convinced you. I couldn't have really made a case. So this is a dream that I had. My grandmother had died. I had been very close to her. And in the dream, I see her in the corner of her hospital room, and she's dying. And as she dies, she's shedding these spiral looking gauzy white clothing things. And her spirit is slowly spiraling out of the top of her head. And as she turns, there's some fear, there's some pain, and then there's some trust, and fear and pain and trust, and fear and pain and trust. And eventually this gauzy white fabric, which I believe was a symbol for her physical body, all ended up just in a puddle in the floor. And she had spiraled out of the top of her head. And I then see myself as 5 years old in the opposite corner of that room. And I get down on the floor and have a full-fledged 5-year-old temper tantrum. And I kick my legs and my arms, and I'm screaming at the top of my voice, I want my nanny. I want my nanny. So the inner 5-year-old is having a huge angry fit. And the next thing that happens is that my grandmother sends me a piece of paper. So this was 35 or 40 years ago. There were not that many. I didn't know how to use a computer probably at all or very well, but it was a printed, very impersonal piece of paper from her. And it said in block computer-like letters, not in her beautiful penmanship. It said, see you in forever. Love, Nanny. And I woke up out of that dream, and I thought, oh my God in heaven, it is actually true, because my dreams have never lied to me, and they're definitely not going to lie to me about life after death. So I became gradually converted, but really in that moment, I decided I totally believe that. So let's look at a few elements that are in the dream. There are some other dreams, at least 2 others, that I'm going to share with you, and with permission of this one family, where the woman that died is dressed in a spirally gauzy outfit, and the man that is dying is putting on a spirally gauzy outfit. So we're going to talk about themes that sometimes show up around death: gauzy attire, spiraling attire, or chiffon, multiple tiered outfits. I don't know why the unconscious likes that image. And it's not that it is always used, but I have seen it multiple times. So it's in this dream. And the other thing that I didn't know when I had this dream is that there's beautiful stuff written in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and in other religious traditions, that the belief of many faith traditions is that when your soul leaves your body, that it spirals out of the top of your head. So I did not know that. At that time, I had not read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So what's happening based on what we've been studying? What we've been studying is that there's a collective unconscious, which is like a universal library of images that nobody has taught you. And you might not even know when an image comes from the collective unconscious. You might not even know that that's what it is. So there's another group of spiritual teachers call the collective unconscious the Akashic records. And that is the belief system that there's a metaphysical library out in consciousness where all wisdom is stored. And sometimes in prayer and in meditation and in dreams, you can literally be elevated into the Akashic records where you are taught things in the dream process that you don't know. So that's what was happening in that dream. I was being taken, you can call it the collective unconscious, you can call it the Akashic records. I was taken someplace where there's wisdom that says your soul spirals out of the top of your head and you shed your body like a piece of fabric in a spiral. The other thing that is in the dream is that, as you all know, because we've all lost somebody, we've all had somebody die that we really have loved. Death is very impersonal. So the fact that my little 5-year-old inner child did not want this woman to die does not matter a whit to the divine, because I believe that when you're born, there's a specific time that is worked out for your death. And that's between you, your soul journey, and the divine. And that all those that love you, when I was a little kid in Mark Tree, we used to say, that's none of your beeswax. That's none of your business. So it's not your beeswax when somebody else dies. So the fact that I didn't want that grandmother to die, it wasn't about me. It was about her soul contract. So the fact that the letters in the note were very cold, impersonal, not warm, see you in forever, the way the letters looked was very impersonal. And that is what death is like. So we have the spiral, we have the gauze, we have the head going, the spirit going out of the top of the body. We have the impersonality of death. We have the person leaving regardless of whether people want him to leave. And then we have the assurance where she says, I'm going to be with you again. So I have a lot more to teach about, but I just want to stop. I don't want to, there's so much material. Sometimes I do like an all-day workshop just on dreams and life after death. So there's a lot of material, but none of the material is as important as if you have a question or a dream that this reminds you of. So let me be quiet for a minute and just see if somebody wants to add or ask.
Susan,
Yes.
this is Jane Estes. My question is, you mentioned in your dream about the spiraling, and you mentioned pain and something else and something else. I kind of got lost in what that was.
Fear, and then pain, and then kind of a peace or a trust. So that doesn't mean that everybody's death is like that. But that was this particular death. And in the dream, there was a woman sitting by my grandmother praying for her, which I didn't know had happened. But my second cousin, who was my grandmother's age, did stay in the hospital room with her all that night until she died, and she prayed her through. So, the dreams travel in space and in time, and they're not limited to the facts that you have. So, Jane, did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Anything else? I promise in the 30 minutes that we have after all, I won't talk so much, but right now I'm going to roll on through the teaching material. So dreams that,
Just a minute, we have Jennifer.
okay, good.
What's the top?
I just wanted to say that I had this vision of DNA and how it passes from mother to child. And when you're doing this spiraling, I'm thinking about how that might apply. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
You know, if that's not an archetypal image, the DNA spiral, then I don't know what is. So good. Thank you. Good. Was there another comment, Sandy?
I don't see any others.
So that dream that I just shared is the dream that converted me to believing there really was life after death. So also in the categories that we talked about, that is a dream that the dreamer has after somebody, usually somebody they love, has died. So I'm going to give a few more examples of dreams that people have had after somebody has died. And I bet most of you on this call have, many of you have had a dream related to somebody dying. So I'll give 2 or 3 more of those. So a young woman who was 16, greatly beloved by family and friends, a really, really special, bright, light young woman that seemed to just carry a particular kind of soulfulness and joy and intelligence, was very unexpectedly killed in a tragic train accident overseas. And the parents had to bring their beloved child home in a body bag. And the mom has given me permission to share from this dream. So I was in Austin, Texas in seminary when the mom had this dream in Little Rock. And she called me in Texas and said, I've just had this huge dream. I just want to tell you. So the woman had been dead for a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years. So this is the dream. My family and I are going to a restaurant and we have an appointment. And when we get there, I'll just call, she's given me permission to use the names, but I don't feel like that's necessary. So I'm gonna call the daughter Claire. We are all waiting to be seated, and I look on the floor, and Claire is on the floor, and she's dressed in a beautiful beige chiffon, multi-tiered dress. And she stands up, and she's alive and vibrant and gorgeous and filled with joy. And I realized that it's the mom says to me, I realized in the dream, it's a divine appointment. And so the mom starts asking all these mom questions. But now you have to remember, the daughter is now on a different vibrational frequency than we are capable of being on while we're on the earth. But the mom says, how are you? Are you okay? Were you okay on your birthday? Were you okay on your naming day? Were you okay at Christmas? And the daughter keeps assuring her that she's okay. And then the mom says the ultimate mom question, which is, are you happy? And the daughter gets this bemused look on her face. And the daughter's not rude, but she says in as much, you don't get it. But she doesn't say it that way. She says, where I am, it is not about being happy. And the mom repeats the question, well, I just want to know if you're happy. And the daughter says, where I am, it's about learning how to love on a completely different level. End of dream. A dream that I have, so that dream happened probably when the mom had grieved enough that she could tolerate the distress of having a dream like that and having the reconnection made. But look at how much information is in it. Something about light garment. And you know, there's a spiritual body, there's an energy body, there's a heavenly body. maybe the unconscious is using these garments to symbolize the physical body leaving, but a newer, lighter weight body coming, who knows? And so, but there's the spiraling imagery, there's the appointed time, and there's the clash between levels of consciousness where the mom wants to know how was Christmas, and the daughter is saying, you just can't, you don't get it. And I've told this dream to the group before, but you weren't all there, and I'm going to tell it again because it fits in. After my dad died, a year or so later, he showed up in my dream, and I said, Daddy, where are you? And he was radiant. He had died of lung cancer, but he was radiant and handsome and gorgeous and fabulous. And I said, where are you? He said, I'm in heaven, and it's all around you. It is not another place, Susan. And he said, I'm closer than 12 inches to you, all around you at all times. And I can't get out of my paradigm enough to go into the zone with him. He's kind of inviting me into the zone, but I'm stuck. I'm like interviewing for a dream class I'm going to teach. It's like I've got a notebook out, and I say, okay, well, Daddy, have you seen Nanny? Have you seen Popey? I'm asking about the grandparents. And he looks at me bemused and kindly and says, I can only tell you two things. It has worked out better than you can ever imagine. Susan, you cannot imagine how well this has worked out. There's no way that you can even imagine it. And the only other thing I can tell you is when we see each other again, we're going to be able to love each other more fully than ever before. So I'm still on this lower consciousness gig. So I argue with this dude that's in heaven that's trying to lift my consciousness. And I say, Daddy, I couldn't have loved you any more than I did. And he just gets very quiet and he says, there is a whole nother level of love, and we can't really know about it while we're on earth. And when we see each other, we will be able to love each other even more fully. So that was the end of that dream. This is another dream like unto it. So my friend Joyce Rockwood Hudson, who wrote a wonderful book on dreams called Natural Spirituality. It's on my dream list. After her mom died a year or so later, she sees her mom in this beautiful garden, in this street, in this town, and there are flowers everywhere, and it's really gorgeous. And she says, and her mom looked great. And she says to her mom, oh, Mom, I'm so glad I get to see you. She said, it is so beautiful. You must be in heaven. So we're taking our consciousness level and we're applying it to a world that we really don't know very much about. But through the dreams and other people's dreams about life after death, we are getting hints about what it might be like. So our consciousness can literally expand because we're getting hints from the other side. This is what her mom said to her. Her mom said, oh no, this is not heaven. And Joyce Rockwood Hudson argues again with her mom, but it's so beautiful. Why would it not be heaven? And her mom says, look at that curb over there. Do you see that lady sitting on that curb? You see she's crying her eyes out? And Joyce Rockwood Hudson says yes. And the mom says she's crying because they've just told her that she cannot get into heaven unless she's willing to love everybody. And she does not want to love everybody, and she's furious about it, and she's sad, and she's crying and pouting because they've told her that the next step is being willing to love everybody. Now, that is pretty darn instructive. So the other side is also, I think they're somehow physiologically vibrating at a particular frequency that when they show up in our dreams, their vibrational level is lifting us in consciousness to another place. So in the first dream about my grandmother, I'm lifted to a consciousness that there really is life after death and that I will see her again. In my friend's dream, whose daughter died, she's lifted to a consciousness that all the mom questions are totally irrelevant, that there's another level of love, and that's what the young woman is learning about. In the dream about my dad, I'm lifted into, I'm continuing to be very committed to my paradigm. Have you seen Nanny? Have you seen Popey? And I'm not easy to give up on it. And finally, he says, there is another level of love. And we get lifted because their energy field is in a different place. And so in each of these dreams, we have a chance to be transformed by the vibrational frequency of where the person that's on the other side is. And we don't have to have these dreams ourselves. Just think of how many people on the planet are incredible musicians, and they can lift you to another place, like listening to Yo-Yo Ma play the cello. I mean, everybody does not need to be able to play the cello like that for us to all benefit. So some of us in this pod have a knack, or a knack is not the right word, have some kind of wiring where we can pick up these images, and the images belong to the community. They don't belong to the dreamer. They belong to all of us, because when we share this material, we're boosting consciousness. So I'll share just a few more dreams that people have had after somebody died. So many of you knew Andre Simon, who was a baker and a restaurateur here in Little Rock. And he's been dead a long time, maybe 20 years. And he and I were big buddies. We loved each other. I would walk into his restaurant and he would say with his Swiss French accent, "Hello, Suzanne." And I would say, "Hello, Andre." And we just loved each other. You know, they're just some people that you love and they love you, and there's no reason for it. So Andre was shot in his restaurant by a drug dealer who used to work for him, who was looking for money to buy drugs. And he was shot in front of his customers in this very beautiful Swiss French restaurant that we all love. And he bled to death in front of his customers. And it just about did a lot of us in, because we loved him. So after he had been dead for, I don't know, maybe a year, he shows up in a dream of mine. And he and I in the dream are in a dressing room. So dressing room is a very common image. Why the unconscious likes to use dressing room related to death, I can give you my guess, but I do not know for sure. I just know it happens. So in a dressing room, you just take off your clothes and you put on something else. And I think that the soul is not afraid of death and not even that wildly impressed with it. And to the soul, it's like, I went in a dressing room and I took off this body and this life that I had incarnated into. And I'm out of that body. I'm out of that life. I'm out of that story. And I'm just putting on a new outfit and I'm ready for the next gig. So the unconscious loves dressing room as a change place related to death. So Andre and I are in a dressing room and he's appeared. It's a big, beautiful dressing room. And Andre, who was gay, was dressed in a 3-tiered, gorgeous chiffon dress, which he would have loved, and he would have looked fabulous in it. So he's wearing it in my dream, and it's so gorgeous. And he and I are making this energetic connection and this link. And I realize he's getting ready to leave me, that his soul, you know, he's made a visitation with me, had a connection, but he's getting ready to leave. And I say, I wish you didn't need to go. And he looks at me and he says, why don't you come on and go with me? He says, come on, Suzanne. And I realize he's inviting me to exit my body and to go to the other side. About that time, a huge window opens and a gigantic wind starts blowing through the room tremendously. And Andre elevates in his white spiraling beige dress, gets lifted up in the air and goes out the window. And he looks back at me and he says, goodbye, Suzanne. I will see you on the other side. And then I look and he's traveling, he's spiraling and traveling off the ground through the air. And then he makes a 90-degree turn and disappears. So another archetypal image in that dream, not only the dressing room and the dress and the spiral and the window, which lets you see out to the other world, and the wind but also 90-degree turns. Why do people have dreams about 90-degree turns when there's about to be like a massive change, some kind of change that we cannot even understand? All of those images are in that dream. Okay, now I've talked so much, I'm gonna have to look at my notes for a minute and get myself unlost. I'm so happy when I'm talking about this material, I'm so happy that it is just ridiculous. It's so much fun. Okay, so we've talked a lot about dreams that people have after somebody else dies. So now let's talk about a few dreams that people have. Well, I want to tell you one more of these dreams because there's so much archetypal material in it. And I have been given permission to use names with this dream. So my friend, the Episcopal priest, the Reverend Christoph Keller, right before, like the night that his dad died, he has a dream where he sees another Episcopal, his dad was also an Episcopal priest. Chris sees another Episcopal priest named the Reverend Sherman Smothers, who had been dead for a while. And it was a priest that Chris loved. And Chris says something like, where are you? How are you? And what are you up to? And this priest says, I'm on my way to the airport to meet your dad because he has an appointment to keep. And his dad died that night. So the idea of an appointed time, again, none of this shows up in every dream before people die, but it's not uncommon. Okay. Somebody recently told me that they had a dream that they had an appointment with, and the person they had an appointment with has already died. And so question mark, is that related to their death? I mean, who knows? So Chris dreams the night his dad is going to die, that another priest is escorting his father to an airport. The unconscious loves to use airport as it is related to dying. And you can kind of guess that, like, why would that be? Well, you're on the ground and then you get in an airplane, you go off the ground and you go someplace else. So his dad is being taken and escorted by a beloved friend for an appointment to take off at the airport. I mean, this material is just, it's just kind of unbelievable. So let me be quiet for just a minute and see if anybody wants to say anything. Yeah, Carol Rose has put in here, everyone's dream is everyone's dream. I love that. A friend of hers said that. And then Libby Grubmeyer says, this is reminiscent of John O'Hara's appointment in Samara. All, yeah, where this information comes from so many different places. So let's look at a couple of dreams. We've talked a lot about dreams that people have after a loved one has died. Let's look at a couple of dreams that people have before they die. So Rick's mother lived with Rick, and she was one of my very best friends on the whole earth. And she lived with us the last month before she died. And I came in one day and she was a collector of beautiful Victorian silver and Oriental rugs and sets of dishes, and she loved to entertain, and she had a big old Victorian house just filled with stuff that she found at garage sales and other sales. And anyway, collecting beautiful things was a big hobby. So this is within a month to 2 weeks before she died. I come in, she said, oh, I had a dream. I really need to tell you about it. I said, okay, what? She said, I've left all my stuff. This is what the dream said. I've left all my stuff in Louisiana, the deep South. So she was very Southern. I left all my stuff in Louisiana. And in the dream, I realized that where I'm going, I don't need any of that stuff. This is a woman that was very attached to her material possessions. She had so many beautiful glass pitchers to serve at parties. She had a lot of parties, and little glass plates and glass everything, that she turned her pantry into nothing but glass things for entertaining. And then, you know how in old houses there can be a string that hangs down and you pull a light with it? She put a sign on the light pole that said, "Beware of falling glass." Because there was so much stuff in there, she didn't want you to get hurt. Some of the stuff fell down. So this lady is being detached from her hobby and her interest and her passion and her beautiful things. And it's like, I left everything in the deep South. I left it in Louisiana, and where I'm going, I don't need it. I don't need any of it anymore. The other dream that she had before she died is the family made a shift with her from trying to keep her alive and happy and healthy and going and blowing and eating and getting dressed and putting on her makeup, to just letting her not get out of the bed if she didn't want to, not do makeup, not do clothes, eat, not eat, drink, not eat, drink, not drink. Listen to her dream. This is the soul telling the truth right before she died. She said, "I just had the most amazing dream last night. I had a dream." She said, "Do you know in the olden days when we had dogs, the dogs were not in pens. The dogs just got to run around in the neighborhood, and they were everybody's dog. Well, there was this dog that had been confined in a pen, and I just hated it. And then the dog got let out, and now it's free to just do whatever it wants." And she looked at me and she said, "While the dog is at your house, can it still run free, or is it going to have to go back in a pen?" This is a dream related to the whole death process. So some of you have seen this book called Conscious Dying. It's available for free on my website. It's dreams that my close friend Marguerite Bergen had before she died. And there are way too many to read, but I'm going to tell you just a couple of them. And I've written some page numbers down. So let me find it. Okay, I'm not seeing the page number. I think I can find it. If not, I can also do it by memory because I've looked at this material so much. Okay, so I'll just tell you a couple that are in here instead of spending our time looking for them. And I stayed at Marguerite's house most of the month before she died and slept there. And she would wake me up in the night and tell me dreams that she had. In one of the dreams, she said, "Susan, I've been dreaming about a potter's wheel and what it is like when the divine is making our physical body, that the soul goes into something that looks like a wet clay pot that is being made. And when the soul gets ready to leave the physical body, it goes back on the potter's wheel and it gets out of the clay vessel." And she said, "It's easier to get in than to get out. Getting out is harder." And in that same dream, she said, "I was told in a dream that when at the moment of your birth, that the divine writes on the bottom of your foot the exact amount of suffering that you need to have for your spiritual growth and the type of suffering. The suffering is specifically assigned to you out of God's love for you for your soul journey." I have never heard anything like that in my life. Then she had multiple dreams that the moment of death is worked out perfectly for each person, even a baby that lives 2 weeks and is killed in a car wreck, that it's exactly worked out the way it should be. Then I'll tell you one other dream that she had. And I really thought this one was unbelievable. She told me that in a dream that she saw that there are angels on earth, that all they do is help people die. And that they work in little pods and that they're in disguise as human beings, and they wear street clothes and they have day jobs and they go to work, but they're not really humans. They're God's angels. And when it gets time for somebody to die, they collect themselves and they help the person get out of their body. And she says there's something like a spiritual bus. It's not a bus, Susan, but it's bus-like. And when you exit in pods, maybe of about 15 of your posse. And these angels that look like people, they're the ones that are helping you get out of your body. And they also help you get to the bus. You don't have to get there by yourself. They help get you there. And she said, Susan, you're not going to believe it, but one of these angels is in disguise as one of my caregivers. And she told me the name. So she had caregivers. And she said, you don't have to tell her. It might not even be good for her to know, but she is not a human. She just looks like a human. Well, I was just dumbfounded and very confronted, because the only caregiver that she had that I didn't like was this woman. The woman had, well, I don't want to confess how naughty I am of why I didn't like the woman. I'm not brave enough to do that right now, but it was really superficial. The least of which was an infected belly button ring that upset me. Anyway, you can go on from there and paint the rest of that picture about what freaked me out about this woman. But it was like, oh my gosh, this lady is in disguise as a da-da-da, and the da-da-da package that she's in is bothersome to me, but her soul is the soul of an angel, and she's helping take people out of their bodies. So now we've talked a lot about dreams that people have about loved ones that have died. We've talked some about dreams that people have before they die. Let me be quiet and see what else you might want to say before I go on and say anything else. It's pretty fun, isn't it? Amazing.
I was visited by someone after they were deceased, and that's all I can call it. This person, it was a presence. They just kind of zoomed through the room, and it was a moving, spiraling kind of movement. And there were questions that were asked of me without words that I answered by just thinking thoughts, and then they were gone. And I don't know what that was, but I, like you, found that to be, because I didn't even know this person had died at that moment, found out 2 hours later on a phone call where the visitation was going to be. But it in that moment of their passing, their spirit came to me. And so I said to myself, okay, that means there really is an afterlife. So like you, it was my confirming moment that there definitely is life after death. And I just need to be, gathering information during my life about what that means. So.
And there's some way that there's certain times that we can go into this other vibration and experience that. It around death, around birth, there's certain things where our vibrational frequency opens up to this other world. And in that moment, I mean, as her soul was getting out of her body, your vibrational frequency picked it up.
Yeah. And the question
it's a present not only to you, but to the people with whom you share it. As Carol Rose put in the chat, it's everybody's visitation. If you look at all the leaders in the scripture, they don't all have visitations. They all have different things. And everybody doesn't need all these experiences. But as a community, we need them. So thank you so much.
Well, they asked me the question, was this a good person? Were they good to their patients. It was a dentist. Were they good to their patients? That kind of thing. And of course, I just answered questions like with my thoughts. I mean, it was my heart was with this person. I didn't even know they had died. So it was very interesting. So I guess that's kind of that area of love that we don't understand.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? So,
Chucky Bradbury
yes.
is trying to say something,
yes,
but she
Go
has
ahead.
to unmute.
Okay, where are we? Chucky, okay, so Chucky, can you unmute?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, just start over for us, sweetie.
Well, I'm wondering if you've ever had someone who's actually dreamed about what happens when they die, or and they see it and they wake up and they keep living. And I mean, they're, young, maybe they're in their mid-50s or something like that. And they dream about this and they tell you about it and they go on, but they dream about it.
It's kind of wonderful in one way because it's almost like a preparation.
Right. But do you know anyone that has told you about it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do. So let me just grab it because it went through my 73-year-old brain and then it just flew out.
Well, you remember we had Kurt had some dreams, had a really telling dream about Cameron, and he sent it to you a long time ago, obviously, but we saw that, but it was about him, not about us dying.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard several dreams that would be something like, I'm taken into a beautiful library that is glowing with light, and it's so joyful, and I get to stay in there and read as many books as I want and be as quiet as I want. So I mean, I've heard a dream like that seemed like a preparatory dream for what the person was going to experience, and they kept living. So yes, I think it's not that unusual because when you're asleep, your soul is connecting on so many different levels to so many different planes. And if your soul happens to connect in to the heavenly plane, then you're going to bring that information back and you're going to remember what it was like. Did I answer that, Chucky?
Well, yes, and you reminded me of another dream that I had about myself when I was in a room with a bunch of people and I was waiting to go through this door and I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. And when I went through the door, I saw this little girl who looked exactly like me as a little girl. And she took me in her arms and hugged me and told me how much she'd missed me and how much she loved me.
Wow.
It was.
I mean,
so
it's almost, you kind of wonder if she's not your soul child and she's just wrapping you up and embracing you and holding you and joining with you, and
maybe so. I think that could be. Thank you.
Other thoughts or comments?
I'm trying to find my little hand raise thing and I can't find it. Can you?
Well, just go ahead, Judy. That's fine.
Okay. I had an understanding of when my mom died. This was about 16 years ago or so. And she died a few months after my husband of 35 years died. And she called me up and told me about this dream she had that she missed the train. She's at the train station and missed the train and was really concerned that she was not going to be able to get on the train and was kind of devastated about it. And I realized at that point, oh, she's talking about dying. And so I said, there's going to be another train. And what's it going to be like? Where are you going to go? What are you going to see out the windows of that train? And just kind of took her all through that train ride. And it was very comforting to her. She felt a whole lot better after we finished that conversation, which was all done kind of metaphorically. But it wasn't until today, as you were talking, that I realized that her fear about missing the train, I think, was she thought that she would go before either me or my husband died. And he had died before her, just a few months. And I think that was about missing the train.
Wow. That puts those pieces together, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you had made a comment in a previous session that these dreams will keep on giving understandings,
Right.
throughout time. And wow, that this was a big one a lot of years later.
Right.
So.
Any other comments?
Susan,
Yes.
it's an echo. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now, Susan?
Yes, Claire, I can hear you.
This is Claire in North Carolina. My sisters and I have connections to Mark Tree as well. But some of this, as far as the relation of what you're relating as far as dreams, reminds me so much of what I've read about near-death experiences and people coming back. And I wondered whether you, with any of your dream work and the people who relate their dreams, have kind of crisscrossed or made a spiral back to near-death relations or narratives of near-death experiences.
Well, I think you're right. It puts you at the same boundary between this world and the next. And some people go on and die and some don't. So I've read quite a few of the books about near death, but I haven't done any teaching about it. I believe that the things that those people tell, I really believe. And that's a really good thing for you to bring into our awareness, that those of you on the call that are really interested in life after death things would really enjoy looking at that literature, because it's very similar and very connected. Okay, so now I'm going to tell a different type of dream. I'm going to tell them real quickly because we're going to stop at one for anybody that needs to go, and then we'll keep on. So I've had several dreams where somebody from the other side has come to me and asked for help. So I adored my grandfather, but right before he died, he did some really screwy stuff with his will that hurt some people in the family. And it made a big mess that eventually got somewhat worked out. So after he'd been dead about a year, he shows up in my dream. Now, those of you that are Catholic, this will not be a surprise to you. But those of us that are not Catholic, I was surprised and I wasn't sure what to think about it. So he shows up in my dream, and his skin, which normally would be kind of pinkish white, is black, totally black. And he's in a white electric energy gown. And the energy gown is working on him just like crazy. And he looks at me and he says, "Susan, I am not dead yet. And I need you to pray for me." And I say, "I will." And so then the energy gown lifts him up and takes him over a goalpost, and he disappears. Drop, kick me, Jesus, over the goalpost of life. He's gone. So I then pray for him for a month with the only fervor that I can relate it to is nursing a tiny baby. Like, if you've ever nursed a baby and that baby's hungry, the milk lets down and you're going to get to that baby. I just prayed for him like that for a month. And at the end of the month, he shows up in another dream. And he's in a very high-tech Star Wars looking camper van, and he's totally transformed. And he says, look what I ended up with this. Look at this. And he takes me inside and he pushes this button and the van will do this and he pushes that button and the van will do all this like way cool high-tech stuff. And at the end of the dream, he looks at me and he says, "You're going to have one of these someday too." So what do I think that is? I think he was in some type of transformational state, and he asked for my prayers as he probably faced his own darkness, and the divine was cleaning him up from the mess he made. And then he is given what I think the high-tech camper van is his new spiritual body, and he's given a new body, because your car is how you get around. And now he has this new high-tech thing with all these tremendous gadgets, and he's looking at me like, "You're going to have one of these too." So I do want to stop for anybody that does need to leave. I just want to say again how much I've enjoyed working with you all. It's a blessing and a treat. And so we'll just, if you need to leave, just please go ahead, and God bless you on your journey. And make sure you're on the Interfaith Center's email list and the House of Prayers email list, because there are always things being offered year round, and we hope you'll come. So for any of you that want to stay on, let me just be quiet for a minute. And it was fun to watch you laughing at that crazy dream with my grandfather. So let's just see what else comes to mind that you might want to say.